Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. We got a great show for you today, and it's all about you women out there, because that's what it's all about today. And we're talking with Dr. Kristen Cain, and she's an author. She's also Rochelle, I think you need to say an M and something and a. So what kind of medicine do you do?
I'm a fertility doctor.
And what do you call it? An M and a?
Oh, a reproductive endocrinologist.
See, and I knew I couldn't say that. And congratulations on your work and on the book, which the name of the book is really cool. It's called Doctoring Your Life: The Secret to Merging Medicine and Motherhood While Loving Your Life. That's a worthy goal. Yes, and that's a worthy goal for all of us. And so as soon as Rochelle swallows, I'm going to have her say hello as well. Hey, Rochelle.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being here, Dr. Kristen. I think this is a subject in the matter that you work and that you help women that isn't spoken about a lot. And I myself, as far as many other women, I've come to learn, have problems with fertility, and it is not a negative, and it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that maybe you need a little bit of help, but in a different way. And I love how you put the practice of medicine towards more of the holistic of it as well, to nurture our bodies, to give them what they actually need rather than to kind of just try to put a band-aid on it with other things. So I'm very thankful to have you here. And I'm curious to start off the conversation, what got you into this kind of work?
Well, I started off in medical school. My first rotation was neurology, and I liked it because it was my first chance out of the classroom. My resident was really cool, so I'm like, I'm going to be a neurologist, and I was focused on that all through med school. Did all the sub-internships, all the research, and I needed to do a couple of years of internal medicine before I could do that. And so I was in my medicine internship, and my first night on call, it was just a horrible night. And I thought, well, I hate this. I made a terrible mistake. It's July 1st, and I'm in the wrong job. And so I just had to think about what I did like. And I liked having a really close relationship with my patients, but I didn't like having people die. I liked having problems I could solve. I liked taking care of women. And I liked OBGYN a lot, but I wasn't sure I wanted to still be delivering babies at 50. So reproductive endocrinology was the perfect fit for all the things that I liked. And that's how I got through that year. I just finished it because I needed a job. And then I went back to where I had gone to medical school and did a residency there in OBGYN and my fellowship in fertility. And here I am.
Very good.
And tell us what an endocrinology with what is that?
So we're OBGYN doctors. So we, take care of women. We're trained in delivering babies, doing surgery on women, and then after that residency, which is 4 years, then you do a fellowship, which is currently 3 years. And that's where you do research and you learn more about infertility, in vitro, how to get people pregnant. You learn more about hormone disorders, menopause, all of those things.
Well, I know how to get people pregnant. I've done it a couple of times myself.
That's good.
As every guy would say.
And unless you're like not married and you're going, oh no, I think I got her pregnant and this stuff.
Well,
But
that's the thing is we just focus when we're teaching young people about sex. We're mostly focusing on how not to get a disease and how not to get pregnant. But nobody really talks about when it's time, when it's right, what's helpful, is there a risk of infertility? What are the big problems that you can face and how do you avoid those? How do you protect your fertility both as a man and a woman?
and I gotta ask you because you worked with young people as well, and there are a segment in our society. My mother was one of them that said, and tell me what you think about this statement. She said, I don't think that we should be talking about sex because if they know about sex, they're more liable to do it when they shouldn't be doing it until they're married anyway. But if you listen to the gospel according to Whoopi Goldberg, they're going to do it because it feels good. At least that's what she says. What is your stance on that? Should we be giving, and the key here is age appropriate information for kids, because kids are going into puberty younger and younger and
Yep.
younger, and shouldn't they be given the knowledge to be able to say, oh no, we can't be doing that, that's not good?
That's 100% true because they've actually studied this and looked at kids who got good age appropriate sex ed and then looked at kids who really just got abstinence only education. And the kids with a good understanding of their bodies were less likely to have sex as teenagers, less likely to have an unplanned pregnancy, less likely to have an STD because some of their curiosity was satisfied just by getting answers to their questions. So they were actually, the information is protective with these kids.
Well, and I think it's vitally important because you don't want kids not knowing what they're doing and then ending up in a bad situation, and being 12 or 13 and having a baby because or getting pregnant because they're not physically ready to carry a baby, are they? Generally speaking.
No, it's very high risk when they're that young. And, kids that young can't give consent. They are not able to give true consent. They're being coerced or forced. There's a reason they call it statutory rape when kids are that young. So
Yeah. And go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, you just touched on such a good point, Dr. Kristen, when you said teaching them to understand their own bodies. Rather than for us to try to figure out the opposite sex, there's a lot of importance on us understanding ourselves first. And I used to be so big about this as I was trying to raise younger kids, is to understand the other sex and all these things and above. But I feel like still, even when I go back and I think about being in health class, there wasn't much understanding about both. Do you have an opinion on maybe why that is? Maybe why some kids take more of the opposite or more towards themselves?
If I'm understanding your question, are you saying that like in current times the understanding seems to be worse, or are you saying
Yeah.
yeah
It gets pulled more into opinions rather than
yeah
like actual facts.
yeah I was talking about this the other day with somebody, and I said, listen, my sex ed teacher was also the driver's ed teacher, and he was uncomfortable as anything, but he got all the birth control and he put it on the table, and he's like, okay kids, this is, here's a diaphragm, this is a condom, this is birth control pills. You got choices. And then he was like, I've done my job. But that was a better education. We get to look at these things, pick them up, play with them a little bit. That was a better education than what kids are getting now. And a lot of it is because either sex ed is being defunded or it's actually being silenced. There are some school boards that won't allow you to give this kind of education to kids.
It amazes me that um, when I was young, and this goes back to into the 60s and early 70s, condoms were something that were behind the counter. And you had to ask the pharmacist, can I get a, and most kids, that were under 18 or whatever, didn't ever even go and ask. But don't you think it's important that kids, the number one thing I think that's important is kids are protected. They're protected from STDs. They're protected from unwanted pregnancies, because that can be a life-altering, life-changing experience that is not good for them and most likely not good for the child that they have down the road. Would that be true?
I would say so, yeah. And the other thing is, if we don't give them as a society good, high quality information on how to be safe, how to protect themselves, how to protect their future fertility, what consent looks like. Then they try to get that information from other places, like porn. And that's very accessible to kids nowadays, but it's not a very good place for them to learn. That's not real sex. That's not a loving relationship. That's not a good place for them to model what they need to do, either to have children or not, or have a happy relationship with their partner. It's just not a useful tool.
And what I know of that is that it's not only not useful, it is a bald-faced lie versus what is actually going on in real life. Because it's acting. It's like everything else. And it's a script and it's all that, but it's not real. But kids take it as this is what you do, this is how it works, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But that's really not the case. But I would like to, and I could spend all day talking about this, but I'd like to focus on your real work, which is helping women who have fertility issues and be able to then have a child, because that's so important for them and their well-being and their life.
All right. So what I do is mostly it's people who've been trying to conceive for a while. But I also see people who are just curious about their fertility. They're wondering, if they need to worry, they're not ready to have a child yet. They want to know, do they have time to wait for the right partner? Should they start trying to think about having a family on their own? And I see both men and women with these questions. And so I talk a lot with patients about fertility preservation, freezing eggs or freezing sperm for use with a future partner, in addition to people who've been trying for a while or know they have a problem already and are ready to start a family and want to know how to go about doing that.
It's really important. And now I've also heard that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the work that you do, is it true that in the American male that sperm counts are going down?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do they have any idea why that is?
Well, we think we don't know exactly, but we think part of it is the modern lifestyle, the microplastics, the endocrine disruptors. These are those forever chemicals that are in a lot of foods we eat, products we put on our faces and in our hair, and even things, in our plastic dishware, like my glass, our food packaging. And those things, they're called endocrine disruptors. So they actually disrupt your endocrine system. And so I think it's a combination of that and, toxins in the environment that are making men's sperm counts go down.
Wow.
And that can have a devastating effect on the population, can't it?
It could. Yeah. Infertility in general could.
Yeah.
Well, I
And
know we need to
Michelle, go
take.
ahead.
Yeah, we need to take a quick break. I'm going to let us at our 15 minutes. It's not too long, but when we come back, Dr. Kristen, I really want to touch base on something that I have had happen to me, where a doctor has said there's a possibility where the um, your genes don't match. Like everything about your DNA and with the
Mhm.
person that you try doesn't match. But I've also heard that that can be a complete myth. So I'm going to let Kevin take us into this break. And then I would love to hear what you have to say about that because it's
Okay.
a huge fuming thing right now.
And we'll be right back.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And Brachelle's here. Brachelle's here. She's really here. How are you? And it's nice
I'm
to
doing
see
great.
you again. And Dr. Kristen Cain is with us. She's an author. She's also a fertility doctor, which is a whole lot easier for me to say than the other name. So I'm not even going to try that. But Brachelle, the floor is yours.
Yes, just following up with the question of, is it true that certain DNA with the person that you chose to create a future with may not work?
I think that's a myth. But that said, there are certain problems where you have a higher risk of miscarriage. And that can be, there are some genetic reasons why you might have a higher risk of miscarriage or lower odds of getting pregnant. So those things can be problems with your X or Y chromosome that cause low sperm counts, or something called Fragile X, which causes women to go through ovarian failure at a younger age. There can be other problems. There's something called a balanced translocation. I don't want to get too deep into the medicine, but that's where a piece of one of your chromosomes is broken off and attached to another chromosome. So you're fine. You have all of your DNA. You don't have any problems. But when you make a sperm or make an egg, you have to split those chromosomes in half so that the sperm or egg only has one set of chromosomes. And that set could have that extra or missing piece. So that's a sperm or an egg that's not going to be able to function well. It's not going to be able to make a baby. And then there's a problem with sperm DNA fragmentation, where the DNA in the sperm breaks down. And so embryos don't develop well. And the last thing is the egg just doesn't fertilize normally. And that is probably the most common cause of fertility problems in women as they get older, of age-related infertility, and also the most common cause of miscarriages. So it's not really a DNA mismatch or a genetic mismatch between the two partners. It's instead, there are a lot of genetic problems that are common and that can cause problems with fertility and miscarriages.
And I'm guessing that from my experience, as I've learned as a woman, miscarriage is a lot more common than the average person would think. And I can be here to tell you that it is a lot harder to go through than just a few months of mental and emotional and physical recovery, right?
Yeah, it is. Excuse me. Just got a tickle in my throat.
You're
So,
good. You're good.
yes, miscarriages are about 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. Most people who have a miscarriage don't have another one, but recurrent pregnancy loss is when you've had more than one miscarriage, and it's very common. It's a very big part of my practice. And it's heartbreaking, and people just, they lose energy because they're getting pregnant again and having another miscarriage. And one of my patients once told a medical school class, miscarriages aren't fun. It's true. They're really just not something you just get over. You know, people mourn their losses just like you would mourn the loss of a child, but it's harder in some ways because other people don't take that seriously. They kind of dismiss it and downplay it and say, well, you can try again, or, you know, it's just, thank God it was just a miscarriage and nothing worse. And it doesn't feel like that to the person who's going through it. And infertility is more common than people realize. So 1 in 6 people have a fertility problem. And this is men and women. It's pretty much split equally between men and women have a fertility problem. After the age of 35, it's 1 in 3. And after the age of 40, and these are ages in the women, it's 2 out of 3 have fertility problems. So it is a very, very common issue.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because there's a common thing going on in some of the legislatures around the country that when they start saying pregnancy begins at contraception, or the personhood begins
Yeah.
at contraception. But isn't it true? I sound like a district attorney. Isn't it true, doctor, that that 85% of eggs that are fertilized by a sperm do not necessarily get implanted in the uterus, and for whatever reason, so that's not really an accurate description of what personhood should be, because it doesn't work that way. Am I wrong in that, or is that?
No, you're right about that. And so many people and so many of these laws confuse conception with fertilization, with implantation, with onset of pregnancy. And you don't really know where it starts because it's a continuum, right? So the egg fertilizes. And then the fertilized egg has to the DNA from the sperm and the egg have to combine into one. And then an embryo has to form. And then the embryo has to make it to the uterus, and then it has to implant. And then it has to start making pregnancy hormone that you can pick up on a pregnancy test. And it's just this long continuum. So we handle eggs and sperm and make embryos and handle those embryos all day long. And those embryos can be tested, they can be biopsied, they can be frozen, they can be thawed, they can be placed in a uterus, and sometimes they can become babies. But I have a slide deck I show my patients. And, you know, I work for a great company. I work for Kind Body, and Kind Body is a national company with fertility centers all over the United States. We have like 27 clinics. Oops. And do you want me to just wait a second?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay.
She'll be back.
And one of the great tools that they provide me is a slide deck for my patients that educates them. And there's this one slide I love that's like a funnel. And it says, I show it to patients and I said, you know, if you have 12 eggs in your ultrasound, you might only get 10 mature eggs and only 7 will fertilize. And of the fertilized eggs, maybe only 3 or 4 will make one of these embryos that we can try to use. But maybe not all of those embryos are normal. You know, if you're 25, 80% of them are going to be normal. If you're 35, 60% will be normal. And if you're 40, 20% will be normal. So it's really a big difference.
And so I want to make this point too. If you're here, if you're listening to this broadcast, you are a very special person, because of all the things that Dr. Kristen just mentioned. You persevered and you made it through all of that. And then you made it through full term, and you became a baby, and now you became an adult. The odds of that happening are pretty astronomical, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot harder for people to reproduce than you would think it would be. You know, we're certainly not taught that it can be difficult at all. And so it's a real shock when people, you know, they pull the goalie and they start trying and they're having trouble. You know, it's month after month or sometimes year after year, and they're not getting where they want to be.
And that has got to be so frustrating, so frustrating because, we spend our young life, and when we become sexually active, one of the things that we say is, "Oh, I've got to I don't want to get anybody pregnant," and
Yeah. Yeah.
from a guy's and from a girl, I don't want to get pregnant and stuff,
Right.
and then the paradigm changes. Because now I'm married and I've got a significant other and I want to get pregnant, and then you can't. That has to
Right.
be the ultimate frustration.
It's really hard. A big study that came out many years ago, but it was really groundbreaking, was a study by a psychologist named Ali Delmar at Harvard. And she looked at her thesis was to look at people who were going through fertility problems and fertility treatment and look at their stress levels. And she found that people with infertility had stress levels that were equal to or higher than of people who had AIDS and who had cancer. And this was back when AIDS was a death sentence. Like, you had AIDS forever. You couldn't cure it, and
Yep.
you were probably going to die from it. It's a pretty old study. And infertility was right up there with cancer and AIDS as a stressful problem.
I can only imagine because now in my case, I was a restaurant manager and I was working 6 days a week and I was working nights. How she got pregnant, I'll never. Well, maybe never mind. I'm not going to go there. But it can be very tough for folks, especially when because I've heard friends say, well, we're trying.
Mhm.
And they keep trying and nothing seems to be working. And then they start having tests and find out who the responsible party is and all that kind of stuff. How does that work out for people? Does that ultimately affect their relationship if it's like, because I know that what your work is to help people then to figure out how to have a baby
Yeah.
when there is a problem, and be it the man or be it the woman. And you're, from what I understand, they're about the same either way, that it's like 50-50.
Yeah, it is. So, or you could also think of it as a third, a third, a third. So a third of the time it's the woman, a third of the time it's the man, and a third of the time both of them have a problem.
Oh boy, that's it.
So
So it can be a real crapshoot, huh?
yeah, so we usually, when a couple's coming to see me, I listen to their story and try to figure out where the red flags are, where the potential problems are in their history. And then risk factors, things like that. And then I usually order for the man, I usually order a sperm test, and for the woman I usually order an ultrasound to look at her uterus and her ovaries, get an egg count. We can do that on ultrasound. Do a blood test for a hormone level that's called AMH. That can give me a sense of her ovarian reserve. And if her cycles aren't regular, I can do some other hormone testing to see what's going on with that. And if it's even possible to do a test of her tubes to see if they're open, if it looks like there's risk factors for that, or if we're concerned about that.
I do have to ask you, do you ever have a comical moment when you say to a gentleman, well, we need to do a sperm test? And he goes, well, how do we do that? And you hand him a little cup or a little, dude, do you ever get any funny looks when you do that?
Well, I'm not the one that hands them the cup, so I can't say that I do, but I did have a patient come out of the collection room one day down the hall, and he just looked at me and said, "Crushed it."
Oh, wow.
So I clapped for him.
He was very happy for himself that he did it, and he did it
I
by
was very
himself.
proud. So yeah, you
And
do get people who, they have a good sense of humor and they make the best of an awkward situation.
yeah, does anybody say, do you have any magazines or a film I can watch?
We used to have that in our collection rooms. We really don't have that anymore because everyone can access what they want to look at on their phone, and they can always cast it to the TV in the room if they want to. So we don't provide that anymore. But guys know what they want to look at.
Well, that's one of the better uses for a cell phone these days. But unfortunately, children and get a hold of that, and they get a hold of porn. And if you have, and tell me if this is true, doctor, if you have a 12-year-old boy and you don't think that they're using their phone to look at porn, I've got news for you.
I don't. I have all girls, but I believe you.
Well, I was a 12-year-old boy at one time. Now, that was a long time before cell phones and stuff. But so anyway, we are talking with Dr. Kristen Cain, and we are going to come back in just a minute. If you would like to go to her website and find out more about her, go to drkristencain.com. I'm glad you got the domain. That's pretty good. And she's got a book, and it's called Doctoring Your Life, The Secret to Merging Medicine and Motherhood While Loving Your Life. When we come back, I want to talk about that book. Hopefully, Brachelle is going to join us again, but I hope. And and she's going to join us again. So we're going to take this break, and we'll be right back. And Brachelle, I, and Dr. Kristen will continue our conversation.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. And Rochelle's back. Hey, nice to see you again. How you been? It's been so long.
Good. Yes.
And we're talking. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking, Kristen, this whole time I've wanted to touch base on parenthood with you, because a huge part of this is not from what our kids experience outside of the house, but also inside, and how important it is to kind of share, like Kevin said, at the appropriate age, and touch base with them on where they're at in life. Do you ever give advice to parents who ask you, I have a kid doing this, or we're trying to figure out how to have another baby, and all of a sudden my child is very curious and I don't know how to explain this to them. Just advice you would give to parents when it comes to opening up with their children.
I think in general, when you're talking to your kids about these things, listen to the question they're actually asking and answer that question. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. Unless they ask for more details. And that's what I did with my own kids. I would just listen to what they asked, but they did get a lot more information just by me being their mom. My kids did, because I'm a gynecologist. Yeah. So, there was certain talk at the dinner table that wasn't at the talk at dinner tables of their little friends. And so as their friends got older and were teenagers, their friends would come to me with their questions, as well. But I would say basically, answer the question that they're asking, keep the answers simple, short, language that they understand, and they'll ask more sophisticated questions as time goes on. But it's never just one talk. It's a continuum. You're constantly talking about your life and things. And so with a little kid, you might they might say, so what are you doing? And you might say, well, I'm going to the doctor. And they might say, why? Are you sick? And you say, no, but I would like to have another baby to give you a little brother or sister. And I don't know how to do that. So I want to go to the doctor and see if they can help me find out a way to do that. But you got to be careful with that too, because they think you're going to come home with the baby in the shopping bag. You know, they don't understand this is a process that takes a while. So you want to be a little careful with that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And do you see, I was the youngest of three, and my former wife was the youngest of three, so we didn't know anything about child raising and stuff, and we had to learn it all, and because we had no younger siblings to experiment on or to watch mom and dad and what they did. Do you have any advice for people that are in that situation? And does your book address it about how to be a good mom, even if you don't have any experience being around children?
Well, I wrote that book because that was me. I didn't have any experience at being a mom. When I brought my first baby home from the hospital, my husband and I looked at each other and we looked at the baby, and nothing was happening, and we didn't really know what to do. So we gave her a tour of the house, and then she had a blowout, and I had to clean her up. And I was like, well, I don't know how to give a baby a bath. You know, I'm a doctor. I deliver babies for a living, but I had never given a baby a bath. I had always just given the baby to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician and the pediatric nurses gave the baby their bath, you know, and that was the end of the story. That was and they lived happily ever after. So I had to call my sister to find out how to give the baby a bath. So the whole time that I was raising my kids, I was thinking, you know, geez, I wish I had a book that would just kind of help me figure out how to do this and still do my career and not lose my mind. And I would ask other doctors who were a little further along in the game what they did, and they would tell me, you know, some of their tips and some of their hints, and I would write them down. And eventually all that good advice kind of became the idea for a book, and things that I did that seemed to work and that I would share with younger doctors mostly when they were thinking, can I even do this? Can I even have a child? Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to manage that. So a lot of the book is really about how to get help, how to not, a big part of the children chapter is how not to overschedule your kids, because I see that a lot and it really makes people crazy.
Now, when you say overschedule your kids, are you talking about like soccer and baseball and ballerina and all that stuff?
Yeah, your kids don't need all that. You know, pick one thing, let them try it for a while. They'll like it, they won't. They'll get good at it, they won't. They'll want to move on to something else. That's fine. Quit the one thing, try something else. But you don't have to take a 5-year-old and put them in, you know, summer travel league for football. You know, if they like a little football, they can play it, but you know, you're not training the next big, you know, Super Bowl star. The next Travis Kelce is not your kid, probably. I mean, they might be, but you'll know about that. You know, Serena Venus Williams' dad, he was a professional tennis player. He knew they were special, and he also knew how to be a tennis player. So that whole family was tennis all the time. Taylor Swift's parents knew she was special. She was winning national poetry competitions when she was in the 4th grade. They knew she was something really amazing. Most of our kids are just kids, you know, they're not going to be that next person. And if they are, if they're Mozart or whatever, you're going to know. But most of us are just normal people, and we're raising normal people, and there's nothing wrong with that. So let them explore. You don't want to make yourself crazy not ever having dinner together because you've got a different activity every night and your whole summer's taken up with craziness. You know, kids learn a lot just by being, looking, playing outside, having to make their own fun. They learn a lot more with that. And, you know, I talk to my kids, their best memories are of things I didn't even know they were doing, but games that they just made up. And they kept some of these games going for years.
Oh yeah, and we, you know, and the one thing I want to touch on is that there are people, and I know some in my life that They take their children, and their children have got all of these things. They're busy, 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 busy. They're doing something every day of the week, and then they're playing soccer during soccer season. And
Yeah.
that's a big commitment all by itself. And then baseball, and then all of that kind of stuff. And what the problem is that it becomes a cultural thing within the family, because then dad and mom start to take on the role of being in the stands, and they get to have relationships with other people in the
Mhm.
stands, and then it becomes a social endeavor. And the kids at all of 11 or 12 years old are in select baseball and real competitive stuff. And I think that's way too young to be forcing those kids, because I know a guy that was the first draft choice of the entire draft in 1975
Uh-huh.
for baseball, and he never made it to the major leagues. So even if you are gifted, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be that individual. And he's had a great life. He wasn't a ball player, but he had a great life.
Yeah, that's just it. You can have a great life. And, I remember my daughter, our neighbors across the street were a big soccer family. They loved soccer. They played soccer. That was their thing. That's fine. That's their thing as a family. But those kids weren't doing, ballet and music lessons and, learning Japanese and everything else. They were playing soccer. That was their family thing. And that's okay. But my daughter decided, because her best friend was in that soccer family, she wanted to do soccer too. So we went. I was like, oh, here we go. They have so many practices. It's always on weekends. They have a game on Mother's Day. Jeez, this is going to suck. But we went. We let her go out there. She tried on the jersey. It was itchy. She got in the picture. They took the picture. They gave her a little trophy, like, welcome to your first day of soccer. She ran around a little bit. It was a hot day. And then she came back. She goes, okay, I want to go home. I don't like this. I'm like, yes. We did our bit, and we're done with soccer.
we have fulfilled our obligation. Now let's go home.
We're going to be a ski family, because we can go away every weekend to our house in Vermont, and we can enjoy ourselves and our friends and our family and play outside. And that's what we did.
Well, and I have to touch on both things that were just said too, because I think that I'm not going to give any percentage, and I don't know the ratio, but from my own experience, half the time that we're experiencing people trying to upraise a new generation,
Mhm.
I used to put an age frame around this, but I don't think it has anything to do with age. I think it's to do with our background and the way we were raised and everything that we think that we do know. That kind of guides us into the way we treat our children and what they want us to do. I had a very big upbringing about, that was normal. They were extra protective and put extra barriers and boundaries and explanations and all these things on top of me that started to pile out of love. They did it out of care. They just didn't want me to make the same mistakes, or maybe they wanted me to achieve the things that they could not have. And I think you're touching base on how hard sometimes we push kids, because we just want them to be able to go out into the world and have this experience and do these things.
Mhm.
Would you agree with me when I say that the more you push them, the less you're actually teaching them? In a way.
I think there could be truth in that. Kids learn, the way kids learn really hasn't changed. They learn by doing, they learn by playing, they learn by, putting things in their mouth and finding out they taste bad, or throwing a ball and seeing what it does. They learn.
Yeah.
They learn by riding a bike and falling down and skinning their knee, that maybe they have to hold the pedal faster and hold the handlebar steady. So they really do learn by doing. Kids can't really learn when they're small by reading and watching. It doesn't stay in there. And if you're doing all this didactic education for them, they're not really learning as much. And they really need to learn how to be human first, and they need to learn that from their parents. They need to learn how to talk kindly to people, and they need to learn how to wait their turn and how to include their little brother and sister and things, without making them feel bad, and how to not pet the dog too hard. And they learn that stuff from just and the way that you are in the world. And that is way more important than some, TV show or some lecturer that's telling them things. So I do think, it's reasonable to, these things all come from a place of love. All parents want to, have the best for their kids, have their kids have any opportunity that they could want, to be successful in life, to not struggle. We all want that for our kids. And we're all going to disagree on how to get there. But I think it's really important as a young parent, especially one with a career as well, take some pressure off yourself. You're not.
And she's off. And we've had some internet issues today, and she's going to come right back here in just a second.
On her behalf, though, I have to share, it is 107 degrees where she's at. She's taking this time to have this conversation with us. It is extremely powerful. So why don't we take our last break, let her have her time to come back in and continue on. I really want to hear the rest of what she had to say.
Brilliant. We'll be right back. Are you looking for a powerful way to grow your brand while making a real difference? Well, Positive Talk is the perfect platform to align your message with inspiration, hope, and meaningful conversations. By sponsoring Positive Talk, your brand will reach an engaged audience that values positivity and connection. People who want to support companies that share their values. Take this opportunity to showcase your business in a space that uplifts, inspires, and creates lasting impact. Don't wait. Email me, Kevin@kmmedia.pro today to learn how you can partner with us and spread positivity while growing your brand.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Burchelle is here, and we're going to call her Dr. Burchelle for the moment because she's in charge of and we're hoping that Dr. Kristen comes back. Dr. Kristen Cain is our guest, and go find her book, which is Doctoring Your Life, The Secret of Merging Medicine and Motherhood While Loving Your Life. And here she is. She's back. Just when you thought it was safe.
Yeah. We made it so far with no problems, so I'm actually very thankful.
I know. I was like, talk on it.
That's all right. And you were in the middle of saying something that was very profound. Do you remember what it was?
I kind of do. So I think it's really important as a parent to cut yourself some slack. You're doing the best you can. Your kids are loved, they're fed, they're sheltered. You're making sure that they're going to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor. They're going to school. They're fine. All this other stuff, you don't need to put it on yourself. You don't need to have the most amazing Christmas ever. You don't need to take them to 7 continents. You don't need to have them in every activity until they're exhausted and they don't want to go. What you need to do is be there with them and cut yourself a little slack. And also, you sometimes need to take a break, and that's okay. It's okay to take a little bit of a break from your family. It's okay to take a little bit of a break from your job, to take a little time for yourself and just be. Just get some pressure off. It's not a problem to do that. You need that to fill your own cup and to take care of your family.
I just
'Cause you
have to
can't take
touch on that if I can, Kevin.
Yep.
Um, would you agree to say that stress has a huge part to play in our health, let alone our fertility, especially as women?
Stress and fertility are definitely linked. We don't really know which is the chicken and which is the egg, but they're definitely linked. And stress in modern life is, it's the way that we live. And
Yeah.
so why add to it? There's stuff that we all do that just makes our own lives worse. The worst thing, the most useless things you can do are things like worry about emptying your email inbox or cleaning the playroom. There is no more futile thing you can do in the world than clean the playroom. It's never going to be clean. Shut the door, make sure there's no food in there, and shut the door, and you're done. You're never going to organize that. They don't want it organized. Why do it?
Exactly. See, and I grew up in a different time. And when I was in kindergarten, we played with blocks and we colored a little bit and we took a nap and then we went home. But now it's like, is your child reading? I don't know. Is my child reading? He's at kindergarten. He should be reading. He should be at the kindergarten level, which used to be the second grade level. And if he's not reading, we need to put pressure on him to get him to read. Why do we do that to our kids?
I don't know. And, I've read these stories about Finland has the, most educated populace, I think, in the world. And their kids do the best on standardized tests. And they have the shortest school day. They have the shortest school year, the longest recesses. The kids mostly just kind of play. Or you look at Japanese schools and the kids spend a good chunk of their school day, the little ones, learning how to make lunch and clean the school. They're supposed to clean the school, those kinds of things to learn how to be responsible. But they, as they get older, they, have more of an attention span for didactic learning.
Yeah.
But really little kids don't.
Yeah, well, playtime is learning time, is
Yeah,
it not?
absolutely. And you don't need to direct that. Better if you don't.
And
Why do
there
you
was
say that?
Because they'll direct it themselves. They'll make up their own play. Better for them to use their minds to make up their own play. Yeah, you can play with your kids, of course, but you don't need to show them how to play. Let them figure it out. They'll learn more by directing their own play. Like I said, my kids had this game and they made, like a whole city. It was a room in my house, but I couldn't touch it. They made a whole city out of blocks and those little doll houses that the Polly Pockets came in, and then the Bratz doll houses, and then, some of the Fisher Price stuff they kept from when they were really little. And they made this whole city and they had all these characters. It was like a live action Sims game that they just, whenever they were back in the room with their friends knew how to play it too. And it was just, they were just acting out stories with these little characters and these little animals and these little houses in this town they built. That thing stayed up for probably 3 years. And I didn't touch it. I wasn't allowed to. They still talk about it. They're in their 20s. They loved that time of their lives. And I didn't do anything about it. I didn't dust it. I didn't clean it. I didn't tell them what to do. I read my book.
Yeah. When I was a Cub Scout master and we had like 75 boys in the Cub Scout group, and at school they played this game. It was called wall ball, where they hit the ball off the wall and then they would, and it was like handball only with one of the big red balls. And so I said, why don't we just have them play wall ball? And they said, what? We got to organize it. We got to fix it. I said, no, just let them go. They know what to do. And they even know how to call themselves out. So they said, no, I don't. Are you sure? And I said, yeah, just let them go play. They're going to be fine. They know how to play wall ball. And they had enough balls and stuff. And the parent came back to me and goes, well, I'll be danged. They do know how to do it by themselves. And they didn't want my encouragement or my involvement. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
No.
kids are resilient that way, and they know what they're doing. Why don't we give them enough credit?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're your kids. Of course, they're like really smart.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, it's crazy you mentioned that, Kevin, because I was in junior high. I remember the moment I had gotten switched to an additional gym class because I could never hold still. And two electives in gym class was very beneficial for me. So
Yeah.
it didn't have a name. I don't think we ever actually gave it a name. That somewhere in the line dropped off, which would have been nice to know. If I figured wall and ball, maybe I would have put two and two together. They gave me a basketball, and they thought it would just be the funnest thing to watch me throw the ball at the wall. It came back straight to my face.
Oh,
And yes,
no.
it did hurt, and it was very embarrassing, but it taught me a huge lesson because not only did I learn to, for one, probably never do that again. For two, it also taught me to choose who I'm trusting, because I could see them clearly laughing as they were giving me the ball. And I kind of
Mhm.
wondered, like, why are they laughing? And then it also set me up ahead of time when there was the next set of kids who came into the class and they're like, hey, let me give you this ball to throw at the wall, and gave them a basketball. And I could let them know, hey, this was my experience,
Yeah.
just be careful. So that was very good for me. And the whole time, now that I break it down and I think about what you're saying, Kristen, the teacher didn't stop it
Yeah.
the whole time, all year long. And I wondered that for so long. Why wasn't the teacher doing anything? He was letting us learn. He was letting us learn our relationships with each other. He was
Mhm.
letting us learn our own coordination. He
Yep.
was letting us be able to learn lessons so that we could go on and teach kids after that. He didn't need to do any of that. And I think it's just such a strong point to not hover and micromanage your kids, because when they go out in the world, they don't know how to do anything and they don't deal with it very well. And it's
Right.
it's stripping away their confidence and their authenticity. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it takes up so much of your time. Like, how
Yes,
are you
it's
going to
so
have your
tiring.
career and how are you going to get dinner on the table? And not that I really do that. There's a chapter on that too, how to get out of that. But, how are you going to have how are you going to get to bed on time? How are you going to relax? How are you going to talk to your partner? You have a life
How are you
too.
taking care of yourself and your kids are watching? That is a
Yeah,
really
your
good
life
point.
is also important. Your life is also your life. You're on this earth too to have a good life. You're not just here to raise another person, to raise another person, to raise another person, and nobody has a good life.
That's sound advice right there. So that's why I'm not going to raise any more little people. I've had enough of little people. And so now my little people are smelly middle-aged men.
It's
And
okay, Kevin. I'll do it for you.
yes, please do. Yes, please do. Our guest has been Kristen Cain, Dr. Kristen Cain, and go to her website, which is drkristencain.com, and get the book that she wrote, Doctoring Your Life: The Secret to Merging Medicine and Motherhood, while loving your life and not losing your mind. No, that's not exactly right. But motherhood can be a mind-altering experience, can't it?
Yeah, yeah. They don't call it pregnancy brain for nothing.
And the next, you're going to have to come back because we got a whole different range of things we need to talk about. I would love to talk about postpartum depression and some of the things that go on with that, because that can be debilitating for some people. I know one that it was just absolutely debilitating for,
Yeah,
and that caused the child trouble as they
yeah.
were growing older. So anyway, anything that you'd like to add before we go? We got about a minute.
Um, well, I appreciate the plug for the book. I really enjoyed writing it, and I think it's a helpful book. I'm available to see patients at Kindbody along with my 27 great partners around the country. We have a kind of a unique organization in that we don't just see patients the regular way, but We also get patients by partnering with large companies to provide direct fertility care to their employees. So this is so amazing because you can be like a forklift driver or a cashier or, anybody else who works for a large organization doesn't make a lot of money, but you can afford to do fertility treatment. You can afford to do IVF if your company partners with our company. So that's really an amazing, totally new way of improving access to fertility care as well with Kind Body. So, yeah, I'd love to come back. I had a lot of fun. It was really lovely to meet both of you. And thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much. And Michelle, it's been a fabulous week, hasn't it?
This is the most beautiful way we could end it, talking about bringing in life and taking care of your own. So thank you for your time, Kristen. And to everybody who's listened to us all week long, have an incredible weekend and be back for Monday with more with Kevin McDonald, myself. And today we've had Kristen Cain. Thank you again so much, Doctor. We've appreciated this.
Thank you.
And I can't remember who said it, but a dad said to his son one day, if you don't behave, I'm going to take you out and then I'm going to make another one just like you. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.